Welcome to House of NIO, a NIO podcast focusing on the latest innovations in NIO in-house technologies. Meet Stephanie Wazer, head of CMF design at NIO Europe. With a passion for blending sustainable design with advanced technology, and Roger Atkins, founder of Electric Vehicles Outlook, an automotive consultant with over 40 years of experience guiding the industry through the electric revolution. Together, they will talk about the development of eco-friendly electric vehicles and share the latest trends in sourcing and manufacturing of sustainable colors, materials, and finishes. Join us to look at how NIO is shaping the future of smart mobility. Welcome to House of NIO, a NIO podcast. Welcome, Stephanie and Roger.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our episode about design philosophy. My name is Stephanie Wazer. I'm head of CMF design at NIO. I'm very excited to be joined by Roger Atkins today. Hello, Roger.
Hello, Stephanie. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Roger Atkins, and I'm a storyteller of the electric vehicle journey, which has now been underway for quite some time. My own experience in that is 20 years.
Today, I would love to talk about a topic which is super important to me, sustainable CMF design. CMF stands for color, material, and finish. Basically, the CMF design team in Munich defines every single material which is visible to our users, both for exterior parts and interior parts. So you told me you have been to Beijing Auto Show before we went into the podcast room. Have you experienced or witnessed any trends regarding sustainability in the automotive sector?
Oh, lots. Lots, both within what you're talking about, the product, the vehicle itself, but also many other things within the vehicle, particularly the battery. Sustainability in the critical mineral supply chain is increasingly under focus. So throughout the whole industry, really, from one end to the other, I think the Americans call it from soup to nuts. It's everything. And in fact, this year has been quite important to me and quite useful to me because it began with the Geneva Motor Show, and then quite soon after that I'm in Beijing, which is a completely different world, very vibrant, incredibly busy, super focused on EVs, of course, and then more recently, in fact, just a few days ago, the Paris Motor Show, which reinstated my confidence, having had that dented in Geneva earlier on in the year. Paris had some passion and was vibrant. It was a good mixture of car companies from around the world. Yes, there was quite a dominant position there from China, but it felt much more eclectic and electric. So I was very happy about that. So yeah, this year's been quite a roller coaster, I think you'd call it, Stephanie.
Oh, that's great to hear, because interesting enough, at NIO CMF Design, when we started in Munich 2016, we had an empty office, and we thought about, should we take inspiration from the automotive world? We could have filled the shelves with samples, existing colors, materials. And you know what? We have realized, let's try something different. And we realized we should create a sustainable environment, a work environment for us first. So we actually bought design furniture which passed the test of time in terms of quality, look and feel, and functionality. And now we actually don't go to car shows so much. We go to Milan Furniture Fair, we go to London Design Festival, and Dutch Design Week to get inspired, to find innovations. Do you think the users appreciate that, or are they looking for traditional automotive solutions nowadays, and especially in the future?
I think it's a bit of both. I think in a lot of ways, when you look at how people behave either now or they might behave in the future, it's often never one thing. It's a mixture of things. I'm not sure I answered your first question, by the way. And to give you a response to that, I think there's a much better focus from the new players, and the new players are typically, of course, the electric vehicle players, on software and the user experience. And okay, traditional players will say, well, we've always focused on that. Well, I think it's quite self-evident they haven't so much, not as much as they might have done. So what I've seen is how do you feel connected to the vehicle, not just technically, but emotionally. And that comes out of many things that for a lot of people, and I guess including myself, maybe not so much you because it's your work, it is you consciously create this environment, materials, the way in which things are presented, that you know because of your skill and your vision will have an impact. But for a lot of consumers, they're not overtly conscious of that. But it's very significant. And I think, yeah, I've seen certainly over those three shows that I've been to, yes, a much better focus on giving the consumer a real experience in the vehicle. The one bit I think that's maybe something everyone should think about a bit more is a car isn't just full of a driver. It's got a driver's seat, then there's a front passenger, then there's two passengers in the back. And I wonder sometimes whether we orientate too much of the design iteration and some of the aspects of, the user interface, thinking just about the driver. There are often other people in the car. I mean, I'll send that question back to you. How conscious are you of other people in the car other than the driver when you're putting things together?
Yeah, Roger, it's a great question because we tried to showcase that in our concept car Eve, because this is exactly when we started sketching and trying to bounce ideas around in the Munich Design Center. We said, it shouldn't be so much about the driver anymore in our vision vehicle Eve. And we even put chairs on the ground and we taped up. It was great creative thinking with the engineering team together, with the design team. And we realized every part of the car is so important. And even to myself, the second row is much more important because that's where I can relax, that's where I can work, that's where I can take care of my beloved ones. So we made sure every part of the Eve show car had a specific zone for different user types. Some users, even in the future, although the car is 100% capable of driving on its own, there might be still users who love to touch the steering wheel, to feel the speed, what happens when you press a pedal, yeah? But there are also other users who just want to relax. Myself, I would love to close my eyes, sit in my car in the Eve show car, drive down to Italy and wake up in the morning at the beach.
Yeah.
So we created these different zones. And coming back to what I said earlier, where does our inspiration come from? It was important that we used colors and materials inspired by the user's home.
Yeah.
So for example, we used the fabric from the well-renowned supplier Quadrat, which is used on sofas. If you buy a designer sofa, you can use this fabric. And we wanted that the user feel at ease in any of these zones, that it doesn't feel like you sit in a high-tech machine, inspired by sci-fi movies like Transformer. And that's very beautiful. And I just want to mention also through the concept car of Eve, coming back to the sustainability topic, we have implemented this innovative material, Karoon. And I have showed you the samples before.
Yeah, rattan. It's people would be familiar with that, with rattan furniture. Absolutely.
And how did you feel like? Did you like the touch? Was it how did it feel for you as a user?
It felt fine. I mean, to be frank, it didn't sort of suddenly flood me with some emotion, but there wasn't equally, because I think sometimes with design, perhaps, and I would understand your passion in hoping it would be the case, someone is going to react quite dramatically or like wow or whatever, but often they won't. But what you don't want them to react with, I don't like that. You definitely don't want that. But that's good. Again, I know you're asking the questions, but because I do a podcast, I can't help asking a few myself. One thing I'm keen to understand about NIO, it is a big company, but it's not a massive, long-established OEM. How do you work with other people in the company from your inspiration and ideas around some of the materials we're talking about to make sure that they're practical, to make sure that they're going to last? Because I'm not a designer, but I know this phrase, form follows function. Well, if you come with a novel form, new materials, you're talking about that. How do you relate to the rest of the team saying, do you think this will last? I mean, how many times does this need to be held? How do you work as a team to sort of blend it all together?
I think we have a big advantage at NIO. We are a fairly small team compared to traditional OEMs, so classical car manufacturers.
Right.
we are fairly small and we have no silos. We have a very low hierarchy. And when someone has an idea, it could be an engineer, it could be a designer, it could be somebody from program management. Somebody can openly share this idea. And then as a team, we try to make that work if we believe it's fitting to our company values. And especially for us designers, it's important to the design DNA, to our guidelines. And if we all believe in that, at NIO, we are very confident and very passionate to bring that directly to our users. We always talk from vision to action.
Yeah.
If we have a vision, we're only successful if we can translate that into action. And then I can come back to Karoon, which I have showed you before. It came from the furniture industry. It was not automotive tested or production feasible. But our leadership team believed in it because it matches to our blue sky story. If we use rattan, so this Karoon, we protect the rainforest because it only grows in the rainforest well. So therefore, we cut the supplier chain. Usually the material would travel from Indonesia, from the forest, back to Italy, back to China. And we said, no, this is not sustainable. We have to cut the supply chain. Indonesia, directly to China, bring the parts into our Hefei manufacturing plant. And of course, we as designers could have not done that by ourselves. Tremendous help from our partners, tremendous support from the engineering team. They did loops and loops of testing, trying, fail and error, but it's possible in our company. And one thing to add, Roger, I'm fairly happy that other OEMs, the traditional OEMs, joined this mission of a more sustainable future and protecting the rainforest. Porsche and Mercedes also introduced Karoon, which is great because I think these small interventions...
Well, before or after you?
After us. So
I was guessing that was going to be the answer, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. So this is great.
Yeah, it is. But to be fair to the established industry for a moment, I do think BMW deserve a bit of a shout out because I think with you know, when they came out with their first mass market proposition, they had a lot of focus on sustainability, on materials that would have been used before. So it's great that NIO are doing this, but I do think we have seen some good stuff before. But I think you touch on an important point about location, geography, carbon footprint. And that when you explained that there to me, it resonated a lot because what's starting to happen now with a critical mineral supply chain and making batteries is people are getting more and more focused on how far does that cobalt travel from the Congo to somewhere else and then from somewhere else to somewhere else. And that in terms of building, blue sky thinking, better place, whatever phrase we want to use, we have to really start getting very granular into everything that goes on. And that is much easier to do if your company isn't in silos. Can I ask you then about either existing customers or potential customers? Did they get involved in that kind of that journey, that process of consideration?
Yeah, good question. Yes. Put users' interest first. This is the number one, mission we are having.
Right.
And in the last episode, my colleagues talked about how you use the voice assistant Nomi. It's very important that users can direct feedback, what works and what doesn't work. So, for example, I would get informed if there is an issue with our materials, with our colors, what do users wish for. We can filter that feedback and directly react on it. And for example, my favorite thing in the morning is when I wake up, I look at take rates because it's fairly easy to see. And I would love to hear your color preference afterwards. Do users prefer synthetic leather? Do users in the configurator choose the haptics? Do they choose the Napa leather, which is chrome-free? Do they choose a silver exterior color, or do they rather have a green exterior color? I see this and I act on it. So, for example, if I see, a take rate is going down, then I search inspiration in the sky and in the furniture fairs and go into another direction and then ask the users, is this the right direction we're going forward? And we're not doing these traditional user clinics, where we have a finished product and then we go through every detail. It's more like involving their feedback early on
it's
into
more
our
organic.
design.
It's more organic.
And it happens automatically. There's not a department who presents these numbers to me like in a quarter review. I do that when I wake up. I check the NIO app both in China and in Europe, and I love to read what the users write. And we as a global CMF design team, it influences us heavily. This is our number one source and inspiration, so to speak, what we can upgrade for our next generation of vehicles.
Now, you raise a really interesting point there in what you just said about you look at what's going on in China, you look at what's going on in Europe. How different are people around the world in that, there are huge differences culturally, aren't there, between Asia and Europe and America, etc., Africa, India. How does a company that makes one product, how do you deal with that stuff? Because you've just said are there differences when you look at the take rates from Europe to China that you pick up?
I have to say no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
Wow.
and I personally think I have to answer to it. We design a global product. So it's a product which doesn't cater to specific cultural thinking or old habits, traditions. There are sometimes also in the automotive design world these very funny anecdotes that a person said you can't do this color, for example, green for exterior because of certain reasons, because in this culture you're not allowed to do that.
I think I know that story, but we won't go through it. I know the one you mean.
And like we had in the first generation of ES6, a beautiful color, misty green. The users in China even set up a user club. They call themselves now Green Club, and they meet regularly. So we're super happy that we brought these users together through the color scheme. And now in our flagship SUV EL8, we have an exterior color Nebula Green. And it has fantastic take rates. So it's great as nearly like newcomers to also leave all these myths behind and just think globally, think as a global design. And it caters to the users. And so far, and I knock on wood, we get very positive user feedback. And if not, we act on it.
What sort of wood do you knock on?
On Karun.
Yeah, well, of course. Now, listening again to what you've talked about take rates, some of how people behave, etc. Let me put this to you that certainly is in my mind, and I think probably quite a lot of people. New materials, by their nature, are sort of untested over a period of time. So whilst people might like the principle of sustainable materials, one of the thoughts they have, I know I have sometimes, is, well, will it last? How do you tackle that? How can that be explained or presented to people as a reassurance that you've tested it, validated it, it isn't going to flake and fall apart?
Yeah, first of all, of course, NIO has very similar specification to all the other OEMs because we go to the global supplier or partner base.
Right.
So we play with the big Webasto, Bosch and BASF. So we do the same testings. Even the partners themselves do the testings. So all our materials have to pass specification in order to be signed off for production. So this is a standard automotive process. And I think to your experience, what would interest me the most is sometimes failure happens, I think. It's in our company value, it's about vision, action, upgrade. So maybe the car you have driven, I hope it was not a NIO.
It wasn't, no. I can't buy one in the UK, that's it. But just to tell you, so everything's online these days. Of course, you go on a forum. If you have a problem, you have a look at it. I know many, many people who've got the car I have. Well, I'm going to tell people because they probably know, the ID Buzz. I love the vehicle. So much of it is fantastic. The styling of the vehicle, lots of aspects of the interior, it's nice high-up vehicle, lots of nice things about it. I'm not just saying it, but if I had the option and choice of looking at a NIO, I definitely would have been looking at one because I've known the brand since the beginning. Why would I not do that? but I haven't had that choice. And so the thing that it does actually annoy me that the protocols you talk about, the testing, validation, the teamwork, the supply chain, etc., what is it that they didn't do that they should have done? And the expense of having to change a steering wheel and the cost of that material, apart from the annoyance to the consumer, it just should be totally avoidable. But
I think in my personal opinion, it's about more like, and I try to tackle that in my private life like that as well. If mistakes happen, how do you deal with it? And I think there NIO has an advantage with the feedback system, with putting users' interest. How would we have done with or dealt with it? And I don't know how the car manufacturer you have interacted with have dealt with it. But I think it's about learning from these mistakes. And then it's actually fairly easy because a steering wheel is a wrapped part. You have a wrapped part.
Absolutely.
So fairly easy, you could replace it with a material out of your toolbox, very simple overnight into the production chain to react on it and help the user to get a better experience with the replaced steering wheel.
Yeah.
So I think it's about more like how does the global team deal with it and what do we take from it? And especially how do we upgrade and learn? And this is always how we try at NIO. And we are not perfect, but I think it's about upgrading, learning, and thinking about the user's perspective. You just want a bloody steering wheel which doesn't peel off.
Well,
this is all you want. So
absolutely.
Let's give it to you.
But what you're describing is this balance between being proactive in the design theory and proposition, choice of materials, etc., manufacturer, choice of supplier, etc., and then reactive if and as and when something doesn't work out. Because as you say, everybody is fallible up to a point. Often, in my experience, over many years, and I've been in customer service myself, way back, sometimes, ironically, if a customer has a problem, maybe quite a serious problem, if you deal with it magnificently, it's actually, they're a happier customer, tell more people about how wonderful you are than if they'd had the perfect car in the first place. The ethos I worked with some amazing people years ago was that actually, yes, we wanted to have problems because we wanted to show people how good we were at solving them. And then that created a real brand equity. And the mantra, I'm not going to start talking about loads of other companies on your podcast, but the mantra there was, and I think I'm hearing you say it here, your customers should be or could be your best salespeople. If in the quality of the product, the way they acquire it and use it, the experience they have when maybe things don't always work out, if all of that is a big tick in the box, your customers can become your best salespeople.
Yes.
And yeah, that's you sound like you're putting together the DNA of that quite nicely to me.
It's in the company philosophy, and I think to answer one of your questions, do these sustainable materials perform? I can share you one of our materials in our EL8, the flagship SUV. The headlining is in microfiber because users really appreciate that as a premium headlining material. And with the partner we have chosen, they have the world's first bio-based microfiber. And the beautiful thing there is they produce exactly the same material in non-bio-based. There's 30% of bio-based material in the PU formulation, which has a better CO2 footprint. And you know what the beautiful thing is? It looks the same, it smells the same, the touch is the same, and all the testing exactly the same. So the user.
What about cost?
It's not exactly the same. We spend a bit of money on it, and I can't put you how many RMBs we spend in production on. But the beautiful thing, it's worth for us as a company to invest that because it's good for our blue sky coming vision, and the user doesn't need to even know about it. And with these, as I said before, with these small interaction, change will actually happen. And that's why I look forward to the future of car design. It's so exciting moving to circular economy. There's so much waiting for us. There's so much to learn. There's so much to innovate. I can't wait.
Well, I'm glad you can't wait. And in certain areas, nobody is waiting. For example, I mentioned it earlier on, I think. When you look at the critical mineral supply chain for batteries, you now have things in Europe and increasingly elsewhere around the world. You've got a proposition now called the battery passport. So you actually audit and quantify what are the materials going into that battery. I think in the same way as what you're alluding to here, Stephanie, in terms of the circularity of a lot of the materials, I think it's going to move into that arena as well. But we flirted with a very important word a moment ago called cost. One of the things that anyone in the industry is familiar with, a two-word term, that on the one hand is a good thing because it manages the cost of a vehicle, so the cost of the customer. But there's often a real downside to the term cost down. You have cost down, and then that means you save a few pennies, a few cents, wherever you are in the world. And that's good in one department, one of the silos perhaps. But then in terms of either sustainability, durability, appearance, whatever, look, fit and finish, it's negative to the customer. And I know, and I'm not going to start again talking about specific brands, but there are a few brands who have clearly had the cost down team dominating what's going on, and the other people have been kind of sidelined. And then the poor old customer at the end of it thinks, I'm a bit disappointed with this. That isn't very good. Oh, but the car is, 15 euros cheaper. So what? You've got to live with it for years. I don't want 15 euros cheaper. I want nice fit and finish and feel. So how do you as a company balance, wonderful people like you, Stephanie, saying, I've got all these great ideas, all this lovely material. I'd like to do all these fantastic things. And someone saying, well, no, just calm down. You're spending too much money. How is that balanced?
I mean, first of all, they tell me to calm down a lot of times.
But that's
I'm
good.
still
That means you're
super
doing your job.
passionate after nearly over 10 years in the company. I think it's about, and I'm very proud of that actually, when we started, we said we want to do less but better. Because coming from traditional OEMs, you have a lot of different tool sets. So you have to imagine, for users who are maybe not familiar with the manufacturing process, if you, for example, have a piece where the top surface is plastic, you need one specific tool which produces this part. Mm-hmm. If you do the same looking part in aluminum, for example, you need another tooling because it's a different production process. If you do the same thing with wood or foiling, it's tools and tools and tools. Mm-hmm. And these tools are actually fairly expensive. They're made out of expensive material. They need a lot of milling time. So the first thing we talked about in our workshop back in 2016 when we designed the first generation of ES8, we said, let's not produce so many tools for one part. Let's define the best we can offer to the user, and then they can have a joyful offering. They can mix and match exterior and interior together, but we don't have this complexity.
Got it.
So this is one way to save money, and then give better things, but do a bit less of the not so good things.
Yeah, and you're kind of saying less is more, and I really get that. And I think in many aspects we've overcomplicated manufacturing, we've overcomplicated design, we've done so many things where just because people could. And I think I'd also include in that, which may be a sensitive subject at the moment, particularly in Germany. Some of the organisations are just too big. There are too many departments, too many bosses, too many people, all trying to do, one hopes trying to do a good job, but they end up being in conflict with each other. And it reminds me, actually, this simplicity thing, and sometimes less is more.
Yeah, I think it's a great ending, actually, because vision, action, upgrade, this is what we stand for at NIO, what you just have described. It was great having you with us today. And I'm sure we'll go to the NIO house out there to the coffee bar and we chat for a long time because it was amazing hearing all your insights. And I look forward to our chat outside. Thanks a lot, Roger.
The feeling's mutual. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie Waser and Roger Atkins, for the fascinating discussion on CMF design. And enjoy your coffee at NIO House of NIO, a NIO podcast.